I so believe in our voices, and I was trying to figure out, how do we share what expansion and be light means? And how do we expand on that as not only my voice, but also the preachers, also the elders. And so I thought, let's do a panel. And for anybody that may not know this, before the service, we pray over there. And anybody, by the way, is welcome to join us to pray around 9:15, 9:45 to 9:45. But there are so many just incredible conversations that we have also when we meet Thursdays. We meet at 6:30 in the morning. There's just a lot of give and take. And, I thought, let's bring that into this room this morning and talk about what does it mean to all of us as leaders? What does expansion mean? What does be light mean? So we kind of started this year looking at who are we as a community. And so if you can put the first slide up. Yeah, all right. So nope, go back. Nope, that's right, you're right. Nope, you're right. Don't listen to me at all. Don't listen to me, thank you. So we had an elder meeting, an elder retreat, and I brought these questions in. And it was, what is CCF? And think about this for a minute. I want you all to think about this. What is CCF? What is Cornerstone passionate about? When you think about us, what are we passionate about? What have we mastered as a community that others struggle with? And maybe other communities, other churches or things that you see that they've struggled with. And I got to take my earrings off because I can hear them clicking. And then what makes our church unique? And then what milestones have we reached as a community? So what this does is it helps us to go, as we're going into 2026, as we are looking at these words, expansion, be light, what are we bouncing off of? What are we doing? There is a method to the way that we are doing this. Not only that, but we've been around, as I said last week, 36 years. We're in our 37th. Well, I want us to be around 40 years beyond when I'm here. So how do we plant seed into that kind of a future? That's what we think about as an elder team. How do we go beyond just this? We're not just looking at the now, we're looking at the future. So I want to show you some of the answers we came up with. So first one, what is Cornerstone passionate about? Okay, so we talked about these, and I'm not going to read them all, but just look at the ones that we are there 2 slides here, Brittany? Okay, so here's the first part, community, diversity, helping people find Jesus. The arts, I'm having a hard time seeing it. I'll read them. Empowering people, empowering people to own their own faith, justice, community engagement, shifting perspectives. We have a fluid theology. And what that means is that we are questioning and looking, and we're not saying it's been this way, it's always been this way, we're never changing. We're looking and saying, what does this mean to us now? So, and helping people live outside the box. Okay, go to the next one. Now I have the sun in my eyes. Look at which one? Excuse me.
Check.
Sorry, camera. Okay, connecting with God, no matter where you are, trusting ambiguity, that's the third way. I'm sorry, am I in your way?
No worries.
Decentralized leadership, core values, loving God and others, remaining, meaning not leaving the table, finances. We've really been working on being good stewards and focusing on youth and children. Go to the next one. What have we mastered as a community? And I have to say this, So even on the elder team, when we're doing this, we're writing them down, but there was disagreement on the elder team. Some elders would be like, no, I don't really necessarily agree with that, but we put it down because we believe that in disagreement, that's a great thing too, because the best comes out of that. So, when you see these, you might look at it and go, well, I don't really see that. That's okay, because there were some things that we would go, I don't really see that. But we put them down so that we can bring it out later and have a further discussion on it. Because some of these areas we look and say, that's a weak area, we have to work on that. So just so that you know. So recognizing and including children, inclusivity of thought, the third way again. This is our what have we mastered. Letting go when it's not working, I call that the fail fast. So, that's under learning and discovery. Shared understanding. I still can't read this one. What is wrong with my eyes?
Shared leadership.
Thank you. We seek people over power, compassion over control, blessing others, speaking into purpose, and church is bigger than Sunday. Church as a way of life. What we mean by that is it's not these four walls, it's going out into the community and into the world. Okay, keep going, because these guys have to talk. What makes our church unique? I'm going to read it off of this, because this I can see really well. Preaching teams, decentralized internship, leadership training, decisions by consensus. The rentals, they're symbiotic, meaning they're relational. We seek love over being right. We don't believe in absolute truths. Healthy leadership team, unforced diversity, it's very organic. We don't push our standards. We don't push our own theology. We recognize our own theology, but we don't make it necessary that you agree with us. We have a flexible leadership mindset. The way that we do baptism, we allow people, oftentimes we have people that have come back to us, they've been baptized, and they've said, I want to be baptized again in my authentic self. And who I identify with as now. And we say yes, and we used to not do that. And inclusion of culture. And next slide, what milestones have we reached? One of them is we've been aiming for a 1-to-1 budget. We hit it. We hit it. That is a miracle. That is a miracle. And the fact that, as I said last time, we are still here. We are still here and doing wonderful. And we survived the death of a founding pastor. That's really big, and we are still here from that. We survived COVID. Hallelujah. We survived several splits. That's amazing. We transitioned to a centered set and inclusivity and became stronger. We survived a female pastor. And you're still surviving her. We survived the milestone is progression of buying the building. We started in that one, moved to this one, went to that one, went to that one. And baptism in authenticity and the mindset change from victim to belonging. So all of these things have been where we started as we're talking about expansion and as we're talking about be light. And I want to remind us of one more thing, and that is our verse for expansion was Isaiah 54. And it is the understanding that even in the space of feeling barren, of having loss, that there's an invitation to enlarge, and there's an invitation to expand. And that is, in a world that is challenging, we believe that God is going, expand and be light. And now I'm going to invite the team, whichever one wants to go first, to share. Do you want me to choose? Go ahead, Matt.
I'm ready. So I think about three things, or three main topics come to mind, and as I've just been here this morning, I've started to get pictures around those. So I'm going to go with that. The first thing that I think about with expansion is the last thing that you talked about, which is that mindset shift from victim to beloved. I think that is something that I see as God really working in us right now, and it's something we have to live into, but something that really has a lot of potential for us. And even as you were telling us to breathe, I was thinking about the process of expanding your lungs, and you said, keep breathing deeper. So often we take shallow breaths, and we're just kind of, and every once in a while when someone says, take a deep breath, you're like, why don't I do this all the time? Like, this is great. Like, and I think I've read, like, it actually does things in your mind, it does things to your body, it really relaxes you when you take deep breaths. The possibility for expansion is within us, but we have to breathe into it. We have to fill our lungs and then even fill them more. And I think for me, expansion is like that process, that image, but around this idea that we aren't, even as we were talking about these things, about surviving these different things, to me, even that word, we can let go of that word.
Yeah.
We don't have to just survive.
Right.
You know, we are thriving. We are a community that is beautiful and awesome, and survive isn't how I would describe us. So I think that is the first piece, is the mindset. The second is to be able to breathe ourselves in, we need to know who we are. And I think that was really cool how you did that in the elder meeting, to start to say, like, well, what is it? Who are we that we want to breathe in? What is that identity? And I think aside from belovedness, the other piece that sticks out to me, like, is the banner over all of these things, is we call it trusting ambiguity, our ability to disagree with each other and still learn from each other. That is such an unusual thing. That is such a unique thing, and I think it shapes, like, all of the other things can flow from that. It really shapes who we are. And the last thing, I know, and I don't want to take too long here, is about being light. Like, how do we live into that expansion? What does it mean in practice? And I think that's what be light means to me. It's like the being of that, of what you've taken in, that breath you've taken in of understanding who we are. It's almost the exhale is the being light. And the image I had was of that stained glass window. The light, it like blinds you. When the sun comes through it, that's how we are to be. There's so much, it's like the most beautiful thing in my life sometimes, is the symmetry of it, the colors of it, just the way it is. And seeing light comes through it, it's like it's magnified. And during worship, I sometimes watch it to see, like, the sun come from behind a cloud, like, and suddenly the light just is there. That's the image for me of that exhale for us, that we as a community can be light. We can magnify that identity. And I don't know what that looks like, but that's kind of the picture I'm going with.
I'll start. I was adding on to what Matt was saying. When I think about being light, there's a saying that goes, it's not what you do, it's who you are. It's something like that. And so we don't do light, right? When we talk about being, when you talk about being is not doing. Right? Doing is doing. Being is just the essence of, it is who I am. I can't not be because I am. And so being light for me is not an act of doing, if I can explain that right. It is just, I am. Like God says, I am. And so I am light. And so I can be light. I don't have to do anything to be light. I just am light. And when I think about expanding, as a dancer, I'm always thinking about pulling up and sitting up and standing straight and tall. And oftentimes, when we are expanding, it's not necessarily a big, grand, huge movement. It is a slight adjustment. It's a slight from being like this. If you can't see me, I'm kind of crouched over, to just straightening up. That allows an expansion of my lungs, of my vertebrae, in my neck, yes, and in my back and spine. So the expansion is not necessarily a big thing where I'm making these gigantic movements. These tiny movements will accumulate, and then we'll look back and we'll see that we expanded, this large thing that happened, but it happened from these small adjustments that we've made over time.
The verse that has been coming to my mind ever since we started talking about the word expansion, the Bible verse, Psalm 18, verse 19, says, "The Lord brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me." And I've just been thinking about, what does it mean for us to, if we're brought into a spacious place? What does it look to contain spaciousness within ourselves? What does it look like to act like we have room to move and room to be? And I think for me, expansion is like what happens when we be the lights that we are, to build on what Janis just said. Every single one of us is ourself, right? Nobody else is you. And every single one of us has an essence that is unique and beautiful and that God delights in. And so maybe acting like we're in a spacious place, both within ourselves and outside of ourselves, looks like allowing that essence, that shimmering self that every single one of us contains and is, allowing that to be seen. And it sounds easier than it is, because that precious essence within every single one of us is vulnerable. It's sweet. Harsh words really hurt it. And the world is not always kind. And yet, God is saying, I have a spacious place for you to be yourself fully. And that's the light. It's like God's love will shine through the unique gem within every single one of us. And it will look different in every one of our lives. But with all of us doing and being that, I think that it allows for us to become a community that is so multifaceted and so expansive, so spacious, so free, able to move in exactly who we are. And that's why we're here at this moment in history, at this place on the globe, is because God was like, this is where you need to be. So let's be, right?
I want to draw a connection between it's time to own your belovedness, because that's what I'm hearing resonate, is it's time to own your belovedness. And I think part of expansion is owning owning ourselves and our belovedness. And there's something that I do in coaching, and it's so simple, but I'll say to people, what's an alternative thought to what you're thinking, right? So and I've said this before here, we get caught in these narrow paradigms or stories that we tell ourselves. And you say, what's an alternative thought? What's another way to think about that? If I could tell you how many people, when I ask that question, go, I don't know. And I think that that's part of it. So when we sing these songs, it's time to own your belovedness. We go, yeah, it's time to own your belovedness. But we don't take it to part 2. And that is, I am the belovedness. I need to own that belovedness. So I think there's an invitation this year to expansion, first and foremost, exactly what you were saying, of our own selves, to take it in, to breathe it. And then what you were saying and what Janis was saying was to just then be. Just be what we've already taken in. Because when we expand what we already are, we are taking the bushels off of ourselves to be that light.
And I think I would just add to that, I think there's absolutely like an individual component that starts with, but there is something, and I think it's easy to miss, their institutions have identities. And when we're functioning as Cornerstone Christian Fellowship, we function a little differently. And I think we also have to speak that same truth to that institutional self. Like, all of the individuals absolutely have to do that, but there's also like, Cornerstone is a thing.
And oftentimes, like what you're participating in and what you're a part of, that's what you also live from. Yeah. So you get the DNA. I mean, that's how our country and things, that's how systemic things happen in beautiful ways and also in oppressive ways. And as Cornerstone continues to change, it's come from its narrative. Yeah. It's an opportunity for us to also say, I'm changing mine too. Mm-hmm. And I think and you may not even realize it, and even in our own lives, we don't even realize where we're living in kind of constriction or living from a place of fear or shame or that like kind of like closed in. And I think this is an opportunity whenever I'm hearing what everybody's saying is like, it's an opportunity to take our space. And like, I'm constantly saying that to myself, and Allie's always saying to me, you gotta take your space. You gotta just be you. Don't be afraid to use your voice. You keep being small. Don't be small. You weren't meant to be small. We weren't meant to be small. We're not this cute little church who loves the gays and the blacks and women and whatever. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's not a joke, right? It's not just some like liberal fest in here. Like it's, I mean, there's a lot of us liberals in here and it's fine. And there's people who aren't liberal and that's fine too. We love everybody. Anyway, but what I'm saying is like, it's not just like, we're not just some cute little church that like loves people. Like it matters that like we're a church that actually like loves and shows up and includes and cares about justice, because this world, literally, it's dying and desperate for that kind of change and movement and that kind of expansion. When like everybody is constricting, all you need to do is to spend one day on social media and listen to the fear and the hysteria of what's happening in our government, and it'll take you into constriction. It won't take you into expansion.
That's why we're doing the
And
opposite.
that's right. Thank you. Like, because even because sometimes like a loud roar or like an agreeing social media post can actually just cause constriction. Because it's just kind of like a battle cry that doesn't do anything to make action. And I think as a community, like, what if we actually take that fury and that fire of like, this is wrong, and we say like, we're gonna expand out. And for me, the thing that sticks out about all of this and everything we talked about is like, it's not, church is not just here. And like, for me, I take that so seriously. When I leave the house, whenever I think about something or talk about something, I'm thinking like, how can I take the spirit of Cornerstone and bring it wherever I go? Because something happens in here that's really special and beautiful. But it's not just supposed to be some sort of like magic potion that we drink and it goes away in 2 hours. Yeah. It's supposed to be something that we continue to give out. And so for me, I'm like, I want that call. I want us all to literally feel like I'm taking up space. It's my time. Like no matter, I don't care if you have a title or not or whatever you are, we all have a call to take up space and be the light and expand love and justice and speaking truth to power wherever we go, and like bringing the heart of this place and not just being survivors, being people who thrive and make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I love all these things because I think that's like, this is just a small example of what expansion is, right? I mean, like it's the way that that light refracts uniquely through each of us. And so in some ways we're saying many of the same things, and yet we're all saying it in a different way too. And I think that things that are standing out to me are the connection between expansion and be light, and reframing the way that I think about expansion through the lens of light. While I completely agree that like the being of light, like just be light, is a different invitation than like go do this thing, but just be yourself. I 100% embrace that. I also think that there's a really beautiful reframe of expansion through the lens of light. And what I mean by that is, like when we think of expansion, I think so often we think of domain, like expanding the ground that I own, that's mine, my resources, my influence over this plot of ground, or this space. But light doesn't expand like that. It floods over into everything, and it can occupy the same space that the light beside it is occupying. Like it's not about ownership. It's such an expansive thought, even the way we think about expansion. Like we're not saying expansion and we're going to do a campaign where we're going to go from this membership to this membership.
Right.
That's not what this is about. What this is about is like, it's that coming back to that internal awareness, like a dancer. To do those things is first aware of their body. So it's like, it's a first that self-check-in. Like expansion starts by looking in, not looking out, right? And that might sound like counterintuitive, but we look there. All of these things come from us loosening our own grasp on what we think we know. And letting that go enough that it can become something more than what we know right now. So that we can learn and discover something new, another way, another thing, and see it another way, see it in another person, reflected differently. And that may or may not ultimately change the way you think about that thing definitively, but it does change the way you think about that thing because of that shared experience. And so I think that's what's beautiful, is that I see expansion it's not a laser that's focused in one direction or one focus. It is light. It's here, it's all around us, and it's also, I think I've shared this before in a sermon, and then I will take a break and someone else can talk for a bit. But my Granny Jo, who was one of my favorite people in the whole world that like ever walked this earth, in her kitchen, she had these little prisms, like these little multifaceted spheres, and they hung from like a clear fishing line in her kitchen window. And when we would come to visit, she would spin them. And those little rainbows, because that gem allowed the light to refract through all the different facets, and it refracted into like all these tiny rainbows, like all around the room. And we would just dance around that kitchen, enveloped in all this refracted light. And it allowed us to see the light that was already there, but in a different way. Like that light was already in space. But the way that it passed through that gem allows us as individuals to see that light differently. That's where we need all of us. Because all of us are going to refract that light a little differently. And that light is already there because God's goodness is here. God's goodness is abiding with us at all times. Their presence is with us. They are with us and they are for us. But it's so easy to miss that. I mean, speaking personally, it's so easy for me to miss that. There's so much negativity that I encounter on a day-to-day basis. So much of life is challenge that it is helpful to me to see the light refracted in a way that helps me see it differently, new, or just to remember that it's there. And that's the beauty of this invitation and why it's important for all of us, because it is different for each of us. And that's one of the things that's unique about Cornerstone, just circling back to that, is that we give permission and invitation to operate like that. Like we lean into that, we trust that more than certainty. You know, one of the things that I said that allows us to do this at the meeting that I still come back to is, one of the most unique things about us is I think that we seek love over being right. That's rare. People want to be right. And there are a lot of places in my life where I still want to be right. I'm sure you have those too, but at the end of the day, I really do believe and do my best to live out that loving someone is more important than being right. And if we can really circle up around that, that allows us to live and refract light in a different way than the rest of the world so often does. So.
And when you're talking about the refraction and seeing things differently, and that gives us an opportunity, it gives us the opportunity to have grace. We can slow down and see it from someone else's point of view. And Pastor, you said something in the retreat that stuck with me when you said, what makes your right more right than my right? And whew, that was mind-blowing for me, right? That, and I do believe that there are some things that are just true. I personally step back a little bit when I hear your truth versus somebody else's truth, right? I haven't come to accept that fully. But in that, what makes my right more right than your right? Because we have different perspectives. And that different perspective comes from the education, the experience, right? All that we have lived. And so I can't sit next to Kevin and say, well, your perspective that's just not true. It is true. And if I can look at it from the different facet, then I can offer grace, even though I may not agree.
When I think of, we're going to go into the book of Acts, and we're going to preach it from the perspective of expansion. What did expansion look like? And I've been thinking about that, and when I think about Jesus in the Gospels, if we frame what he was doing is he was coming to expand the way that they had believed and the way that their theology was framed. And it was met with conflict, and it was met with opposition. So enlargement or expansion is not just about, did you notice I had to look at the word? It's not, yeah, and it's right up there, yeah. It's not just about, kumbaya, there is going to be conflict because we're reordering the way that we think. There's going to be conflict within us. There's going to be conflict within this space. There's going to be conflict as we go out because we're reordering the way that we approach things and that we think. And that's important to recognize that part of it. And even as I'm reading the Gospels again again going through Acts in preparation for where we're going next, and I'm looking at the stories from this perspective of expansion, and I'm looking at the level of conflict. Like it's one big, if you look, it's just one big massive challenge and conflict that's going on biblically. I don't know where we ever got the idea that there was going to be like peace, that we were going to have we were going to hold hands and skip. It's not there. It's just not there. And so I think it's important to recognize that as the light shines, as we begin to expand, that there is going to be, as I said last week, there is order, there is disorder, and then there's reorder. Notice that the order lasts 45 seconds, and the disorder and the reorder, both of those are, I'm going to call it staticky. There's some static involved. You're looking at me. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I've just been thinking about how the nature of the universe is expansion. That's one of the things that blows my mind. Like, all that is bigger now than it was a minute ago. Like, I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. And when we look at, we're re-entering into a deeper truth when we think about expansion. So where I've been experiencing that recently, I've been reading the Psalms. The mindset in so many of the Psalms is not what we would call Christian at all. So much of it is just God, I hate those people, smite them. That's 90% of the Psalms. I've been reading them out loud and praying them and being God, I don't agree with that. God, I don't agree with that. The psalmist, I don't know what he's thinking there. And I'm just going wow. And what struck me is that's just the nature of expansion. That's what you were talking about. Christ revealed a deeper reality of who God is and gave us something that we've already lived into that's expanded from 3,000, 4,000 years ago until now. But that means that nature of God doesn't change. It's still expanding. It's still growing. And how we thought 200 years ago about all sorts of things feels crazy. It's how could we have not seen all of these things? And in 200 years from today, hopefully, we will continue to have expanded, and the church will look back and be wow, what were they thinking? Those are the dark ages. But all we can do is faithfully enter into that river of God's expansion and say, take us where we are today to where you need us to be tomorrow.
But sometimes, Matt, people get stuck in church that, God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore, so the church can't change. Right? To have a female, you can't do that because culturally, whenever that was, women were not supposed to be speaking in public. So somehow today, that's blasphemy.
Yeah, and I think that what's important is that God is the same. Our understanding of God and our interpretation of God is different. We change, yeah. So the assumption under God is the same yesterday, today, is that I have the full knowledge when I interpreted the Bible, or anybody had the full knowledge when they were interpreting. So we have a few more minutes and we have to do communion. I'm curious, real quick, as quick as we can go, what's coming up for you? Like you've heard two, you've heard us speak. You know, what, if anything, is coming up for you? One or two people?
My name is Dan, and I've touched base with Cornerstone about 3 different times before this late this fall. And as I'm listening, there were 4 things that grabbed me. One is that instead of moving from victim to beloved, or in addition to moving from victim to beloved, and it was said a little later, moving from surviving to thriving,
Yeah.
a state of being. We talk about the difference between being and doing. Authentic doing comes about knowing your being. It flows out of knowing your being, then you have authentic action, authentic doing. And that also starts with knowing your being is loving yourself, so that you can expand and love others. Third point was know and claim your space. It suddenly struck me that the reason I want to know and claim my space is so that I can invite others to expand and share my space. That I'm not isolating in my space, but I'm sharing and expanding my space so that you have a place to expand to also.
Nice.
And the 4th point was really about light and windows. Being a window, being a lens, changes the light that goes through it. And think about the light as being God, being love. The active thing of loving. And if we're each a window, if we're each a lens, we color that light from our own perspective. But by coming together, we recreate pieces of the original light in a way we never imagined.
Sweet. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, like, we've been talking a lot about the story of Cornerstone and like what Cornerstone stands for, what Cornerstone does well, what Cornerstone wants to do this year. And I want this question to come across the right way, so bear with me, but like, how, when we talk about expansion, what do we see our role in expanding the gospel versus expanding Cornerstone as a church? Like, because I love the church so much, and I don't just mean capital T, like THE church, like I love this church. But how do we expand the gospel writ large instead of just Cornerstone, like as a corporation or entity or something?
It's a great question. Does anybody want to answer it, or you want to hand it to me? When I'm talking about Cornerstone, for me, the essence we carry is Jesus, always the gospel. So though we're saying Cornerstone, and I think part of what you're hearing is the identity that we've carried as victim. And I think that in that journey of that, we're saying, no, that's not us. We are this, inherent within. And we're not talking, I want to reiterate, we're not talking about numerical growth. We're talking about the light of who Christ is, of what makes us who we are. And that's Jesus, that's the gospel. But it's a great clarification, because in my brain, it's the same. Right? In my brain, to say we're expanding Cornerstone, it's saying we're expanding the gospel. So that's a great clarification to go, we need to make sure that people know that's what we mean. So we're not really saying, oh, we want to make Cornerstone. Yeah. And what we're saying is the one who has, brought these core values in, the one who calls us beloved, that's who we are expanding. That's what our heart is. The ones who calls inclusivity within our community, because we believe that he is inclusive, they are inclusive, right? That's who we are expanding, the message of the gospel that we believe. So it's a great clarification.
And I know you're having something too, Matt, but the thing that's coming up for me when I hear that question is, I used to think the gospel meant one thing, a very specific thing, a very narrow thing. But to me, like, even that word means something so much richer and fuller and more beautiful. Like, to me, the gospel is, like, what is good news to you? Like, what would you hear and you'd be like, oh, that's the news I've been waiting for. Like, that is a news that's so good, it transforms me into something more like myself than I ever knew was possible. And that's maybe different for you than it is for the person beside you or for me, but like that's an expansive, beautiful invitation that I feel God calling us into. And this is a space where we want to come together as a collective and collaborate around that idea while still giving freedom and space for people to experience what that good news is for them.
Yeah, no, I was just going to appreciate the question. I think that's a really helpful reminder that there's so much the way we often think about expansion in terms of land and control. It's so hardwired that it's very easy whenever we're talking about expansion to assume and to even fall into that thought pattern of like expansion means CCF gets bigger, whatever, even in a non-numerical way. Like I think maybe how I would then reframe my thinking about it a little is I believe God has given us this beautiful message that it's a piece of the gospel that has been lost or misunderstood, and God has gifted it to us to proclaim.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Continue to grow and unfold and bring about more life, more expansion, more life.
Yeah. Yeah. Carol.
The one thing that I keep hearing in this is the be you, and looking around this church, all of us be us and share our light, pass it along like we do at Christmas, pass this light,
Yeah.
share this light, expand that way. And when you were talking about mirrors and who I am, like there's a mirror. If you have a mirror on the other side of a mirror, it just goes into infinity. So like if you take all of that expansion, like so CCF, yes, here we are, but we are outside of these walls. And if each of us shares our light and shares what we're being, what we're learning and we're taking in from here outside of these walls, we don't know who we touch along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Do we have a thing?
no, we don't. No. Go ahead, just use your voice.
As I've been doing the gospel for my time, what has stood out for me is the Beatitudes. And I have like broken that down to being in an attitude of gratitude, living in loving action.
Oh.
Because we, because in a prayer thought, there is no individual I. It is always about we. We are called to be salt and light. And that is what the Beatitudes is about. That if we are being in an attitude of gratitude, living in loving reaction to how we have been blessed, not just we have been blessed to be receiving, but how we are also blessed to be giving in our living, then we automatically, because what we're also called to do is we have been invited by the light that was dynamic, not static. The universe expands through dynamic action, not passive inaction. Therefore, that if I and we are being salt and light, then we are going to automatically multiply. The first few verses in Acts 1-2 is that when they shared what they had with those that did not have, then they came because they were just so, are you kidding me? Where did all this come from? But because we are salt and light, we preserve, and in that preserving and in that sharing of the light, people will come. And when they come, we just have to be ready to expand the table to include those who are coming in after us so that they feel welcomed at the table, that there is room at the table for then this expanded light to then produce and multiply new expanded light. And that's how we will grow.
Amen.
We're going to go into communion. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, everybody.